What's up, folks? David Soto Jr. here, and this is the David Soto Jr. podcast. What's up, folks? Welcome to episode 33 of the David Soto Jr. podcast. I am your host, David Soto Jr., and today's topic of discussion is running away. Specifically, we as a people, there are a bunch of us out there that run away from our problems. And I talked about this in an article that I wrote. And here's the funny thing. I wrote this article in 2014, and I had this experience in 2010 where I thought I was so cool, and I just really thought I was so deep, and I gave this girl this advice where I'm like, it's not here. And she's like, what's not here? And I'm like, what you're looking for. And so essentially I could tell that, and there's a lot of us out there. There's a lot of these travelers that are out trying to find themselves, and I hate it when the furnace kicks on. So there's a lot of us out there, and we're trying to find ourselves, and we're looking, and when you go out there and you're traveling, you see a lot of people, and that's what traveling is so cool, because you see a lot of people that are actually a lot like you, because they too are looking for something or running for something. It's essentially the same thing. They're looking for like inner peace, or they're running from a problem, and those problems, what I realize is that those problems are within. Essentially, you're taking them with you. You take those problems with you. No matter where you go to run away from your problem, they're still going to be there. I shouldn't probably drink coffee while I record a podcast. But it'll get cold. And that's the worst thing, is cold coffee. So, what I am talking about is running away. Of course, I'm on this mental health kick. And so I've realized that I've been a serial, what I call runawayer. And I've been running away. I'm still not even done like looking at myself. Like I come to this realization, I'm still not even done. So right now I look at my life and like, when did I start running? Like the minimum was at the age of 18. When I joined, I joined the military at 17, but I was in what is called the delayed enlistment plan, and so I didn't actually leave for boot camp until December. Enlisted in April, graduated in May, and did not leave for the military until December of 1992. Can you believe that? So that could very well be the first time. It was the first time I had control and was able to leave myself, to able to just pack up and run away as an adult, a young adult, mind you. But it was the first time I was actually able, and so I started my adult life by running away from my problems. But so what made me come to this conclusion? Again, I wrote this article giving this girl this advice. And then I realized that, oh my God, I'm giving her this advice, like it's not here, like whatever you're running away from, or whatever you're looking for is not here. And I gave her this advice, and I realized that I should be talking to myself. I should be giving myself this advice. And that was 2010. And I ignored it. I ignored that realization that I made. I'm like, And I just kept running. I just kept on. And we like to say that we love, people who travel love to say, oh, I love traveling. So I really, do we love traveling, or do we love running away? I don't know. But, so, I've been talking about it. I've been very open, and I'm going to continue to be very open about my depression. And so, recently, it got pretty bad. It came back, and I don't I don't know how much detail I went in where I am, because I've been writing post, and then what I've written. I don't know if I've published everything, and then do I talk about it on the podcast. So, but I'll go to say this, that you know who, and I'm not supposed to talk about this, but better to ask for forgiveness than permission. But we go to couples counseling, and for one thing, it's pretty cool because the counselor is very interested in us, because we aren't. I don't feel like we're as bad as some people are, and she really likes the fact that we are there to actually, with this extreme desire to, like, get better, or fix whatever problem. Like, I don't even know if we necessarily have problems. It's really good to have a third person there to, like, talk to an unbiased person. And then what really is happening is I'm saying something, and you know who is saying something, and we're like, oh really? Like, oh well, that's not so bad at all. Like, we're learning more than anything to communicate with each other. And an example of this is, I talked about how I brought up my depression, and I brought up how kind of insensitive who has been towards it, and that kind of hurts my feelings, and blah blah blah, and so I brought it up, and who mentioned that the last time I went through this, I blamed her. And so right away, I'm like, the last time? Like, what are you talking about? Like 14 years ago last time? Like 2004 last time? Because... And then I'm like, well, wait a minute. I was depressed then. And I talk about it. I've talked about it a lot. How I ran away to Iraq, and I got better and lost weight. Speaking of weight, oh my gosh, look at this. It's another topic of conversation, and I always joke around, and like how I had to run away, and I needed some peace in my life and to de-stress, so I went to war. It's a big joke, I guess. Haha. But she brought this up, and that's exactly what happened. It's exactly what was going on. I was depressed. Like, I thought it was her. I blamed her for it. And now that we're back together, 14 years later, we're back together, and she sees the same things. And she knows that it happened before, and now it's happening again, and she's blaming me for it, and I blamed her for it before. Now I'm telling her, no, it's not you. I realize that I have something going on, and I need to get help, but she's still blaming. And then, hence the insensitivity, because she thinks, and I've literally blamed her for it, that my depression is because of her, and now we're back together, and I'm depressed again, and she's taking it personal, and which is understandable based on our history. So, that's when I realized that I was depressed back in 2004, and I look back and I realized that if I was depressed in 2004 or 14 years ago, was I depressed in 2003 before I met you know who? Yeah. And it just caused me to look back on relationships, before you know who, after you know who, jobs. It makes me look at jobs, situations, how I've been fired from almost every job I've ever had. I've lost somehow, or even like dramatically quit. Like, with exception of the military, but that's a kind of different scenario. But jobs, situation, girlfriends, relationships, locations, where I'm living, I always blame something else. I've always been unhappy, and I've always blamed something else. And I've always, quote unquote, ran away. Sometimes I didn't literally run away. Sometimes I just made a drastic change. Whether it was like, I was in a 1 year relationship before I met you know who, and really, she was a nice girl. She was giving and loving and attractive and smart and not, and like, and I remember her being so hurt and me sending her away and telling her to get away from me, and essentially I broke up with her, and she was perplexed, like she couldn't figure out, she couldn't understand why I was so, what was wrong with me, like what was she, I don't know if she thought what she was doing, but what was wrong with that relationship? Nothing. So I felt like I was bored. I felt like we didn't have any. I blamed her. I blamed her for being miserable, and she was a nice woman, and granted, she wasn't the love of my life, but there is no reason why and even to this day, I look back, I cannot think of one reason to blame her for my misery. Yet I did, and I broke up with her, and I started playing the field again, and then I met you know who, and then the same situation happened again, except my love for you know who was so strong. Like, I did not want to go anywhere. I did not want to run away. And so I tried for as long as I could to stay. But eventually the depression overtook me, right? It's not the correct, grammatically correct. So I would be passive if I say I was overtaken. That would be passive, but I don't know. But my point is that everything that's happening or has been happening now in 2018 happened in 2014. I gained weight. I was looking for work. There's another story there. I was just depressed and upset and emotional and irritable and just not happy and was sad. And I left. I ran away. I went to Iraq. I left you know who. My fault. But the thing is that I always think that it's gonna be like I broke up with the girl before you know who. Thought that would be better. Just before that, I quit my job as an instructor, which was one of my favorite jobs in the world. Or no, it was my favorite job. The best job I ever had was being an instructor and teaching. But I thought that situation was bad, so I quit it and started my own business and became a personal trainer. Like, the situations kept going. Whether I was literally ran away and left the country or the state, or I made some drastic decision like breaking up with a long-term girlfriend or changing careers or starting a business. There was always something that I did that to make me feel better, that I thought would, like, this is it. This is going to change my life. This is going to make me feel better. And it did. It always did, but it was temporary. It never was permanent. And here I am, 44 years old, and recently got hit with another battle with depression. None of those drastic changes that I always thought was going to helped. Not permanently anyways. So one of those scenarios was, of course, me going to Iraq and taking a job and leaving you know who, which of course you caused us to break up. And So I left in 2004. We made it until 2005. And we took a beautiful romantic trip to Italy, which, by the way, we have the video, and it's hilarious and to watch us back then. And it's on cassette, and I bought the software, so I'm gonna try and upload it to YouTube. And I don't think she wants me to share it on YouTube, but it's hilarious and it's fun to see us way back in February of 2005. So after that trip to Italy that we took, the relationship just went down and hill from there, and we weren't able to sustain the long distance relationship, and we broke up. And that's another story. I'm getting off track. Going to Iraq though, I immediately lost weight. I felt important. I had an important job. I was in something that I thought was important. I like being part of a big deal. You know, the war in Iraq was a big deal, and I liked being a part of it. And I hated sitting at home while Americans were out there getting killed and serving the country, and I wanted to be a part of it. So I felt like that was something important and something I needed to do. And while I was there, I did feel better. I lost weight. I started reading. I started meditating. I started doing all kinds of stuff. And like, oh, my life is so much better now that I'm not around you know who. But it didn't take long, especially after the first couple months, if even that, for it to be for me to realize I was miserable. Like, I hated it. I hated waking up. I would go to bed as early as possible just to get my days out of the way. I would just go to bed. I remember doing this when I was deployed before, right after 9/11. I was deployed, and I remember just going to bed as early as possible, getting as much sleep. A sign of depression, just so you know. And I remember doing it in Iraq, and I realized, like, wow, I didn't realize it, but now I see, like, I ran away, I blamed her, I got away from her, and I felt better for a couple months, and then it all came back. Everything that was about, the only thing I didn't do was gain the weight back, but definitely the depression and the other symptoms of depression were there. Actually, that was the first time I went, tried ketogenic diet, and it was pretty good. More on that later. Another example of, so here's the thing. I'm going to bring up Brooke Castillo, because Brooke Castillo has been a pretty good influence in my life. Her podcast, I kind of stopped listening to it because I'm tired of hearing everything she says, and she repeats the same things over and over again. But then when you're broadcasting and you have this message that you're sending out, of course you're going to repeat it over and over again. But one of the things that she used to talk about is how emotions are a choice, and how you feel about something is based on your thoughts. And if you change your thoughts, I'm like, that's bullshit, Brooke. That ain't right. And as time went on, I realized that she was right, that was something. That was absolutely true, and I chose to ignore it, and I didn't want to believe it. The other thing she says is that to not make decisions, big decisions, until you are happy. So she gives examples of, like, don't leave your husband if you're unhappy in your marriage. Wait till you're happy and then make the decision, right? Counterintuitive, right? Doesn't make sense. But here's the thing. She says that those things, like your husband isn't the reason why you're unhappy, or your job isn't the reason why you're unhappy. Your relationship, your situation, whatever the case is, isn't the reason why you're unhappy. And when you leave it, you are going to continue to be unhappy, and you could be making a decision based on an emotional decision, based on negative emotions, it could be the wrong decision. You could be you could leave that person and leave that relationship because you think they make you miserable, when in fact you make you miserable. And you could be leaving, oh my God, I just realized. So here's the example. This is why these podcasts are so good for me. I enjoy that people listen to them, and I enjoy that people might be getting stuff out of it. But here's the reason why they're so good for me is that I just made the realization. I just now really clicked what Brooke Castillo has been saying all this time, is that if you might be making a wrong decision based on, because of the how you're feeling, an emotional decision, not the right one, an emotional one. Take, for example, perfect example, I take a job in Iraq and leave you know who. I tell her I found a job. Babe, that's great. Where is it? And I say, Iraq. I leave in 2 weeks. I did not make her part of the decision. I did not do anything. I was ecstatic to get away. And I thought I was going to solve all my problems. And it was a bad decision because it led to the breakup with the love of my life. And it led to 13 years of misery without her. I made a decision, an emotional decision, based on the fact that I thought it was going to improve my life and make me happy. And I was wrong. And it caused essentially 13 years of misery. It caused me to be without her for 13 years. And that is a perfect example of what Brooke Castillo talks about. Is that if you deal with your problems, if you wait till you're happy to make your decision, you will be making the right one. It won't be based on emotion. It won't be based on the situation. It will be based on whether you really want, if that decision is good for you or not. My decision to leave you know who back in 2004 was not a good decision, and it led to a lot of years of pain and being without her and being without the love of my life. All because I thought it was going to make me happy. I made this big, drastic decision. So once again, Brooke Castillo is right. She's right about everything, I think. Can a person be so right? If you don't know about her, her podcast is about teaching others to be life coaches, but in the process, you learn about yourself, and she actually helps coach people. You're getting coaching yourself, but essentially, she's very smart, very wise, and she in order to teach people how to be coaches, she teaches them to coach themselves first. And I think that process is where I specifically learned a lot about myself. So check her out, Brooke Castillo. It's the Life Coach Podcast, or Life Coach something. Just look up Brooke Castillo. I'm a little over. I like these 20-minute podcasts, but I get talking. So I'll give one more example, and I talked about this in my most recent, one of my most recent articles, was that even though I had been listening to Brooke Castillo and I believed a lot of what she said, she kept saying, don't make these decisions until you're happy. But back in 2014, I was pretty miserable again, and I blamed the woman I was dating. It was her. I had to get away. I had to move out of her house, and it was a big ordeal, and everybody thought we looked great together. But I remember breaking up and getting my apartment, my own place, and feeling kind of good about being a bachelor. But it never. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, Brooke Castillo says not to do this, but what would Brooke Castillo know? And it turned out, like, again, I had gained some weight, but then as soon as I moved away, I lost it and was doing I was doing pretty good, enjoying my life, getting back in rock climbing, especially as I was losing the weight. I was doing rock climbing a lot better. But again, I felt lost and miserable, and it all came back again. And then, of course, what was my fix? My fix was to do van life and to run away in my van. So, at the time, I remember, and this is important because I remember thinking, like, Brooke Castillo is wrong. Like, I need to make this decision. This is what I need to do. I need to get out of this relationship. And she proved me wrong. Again, it was a bad decision. I don't regret making it, and like I regret leaving you know who, but it was another sign, and it was just a few years ago, that I have some issues that I cannot run away from. So that brings us back to where we are now. You know who and I are together, and I am grateful and love every minute of it, especially because we have a baby on the way, which is super cool. Oh, my stomach is growling. But here's the thing. Here comes the depression again, and now I'm dealing with it. I'm like, what's going on? Why is it? And it's getting worse, and it's affecting our relationship, and it's making me super irritable, and it's, it causes me to snap at who, and she can snap back, and then we're like in this, we can go back and forth. And finally I realized like I needed help, and I got help. Again, I don't know how much I've talked about it, but I ended up going to VA and finally getting help. And the reason that the reason why it has such an impact on us, and why maybe it's the worst it's ever been, and maybe it's causing the most problems it's ever caused, and maybe it's leading to like, for the first time, like I really feel emotional and upset and crying for her. Like, it's the worst it's ever been. This depression is the worst it's ever been. Again, who thinks it's her. She thinks she's to blame for it. And it's confusing because I don't want to blame her. But then we look at the things like, oh, well, here she is again, and now I'm miserable again. Now I know, I go, there's something up. Oh my God, can you hear that? But here it is. Here's the thing about my depression and with who, is that I am not running away this time. And that's why it's so bad, because this is something that I've always kind of alleviated, whether it's running away or making these drastic changes in my life were kind of band-aids, or they were kind of like aspirins. Like, they didn't solve the problem, but they alleviated the pain somewhat. And now I am not choosing to alleviate the pain, because I am not running away from this woman. I am not running away from our family and our future, and I am not going to make any decisions. There is no breakup. I am not going to move to another country, another state. I'm not taking a job anywhere, which is a topic of conversation. But this is my future. We have a family, and it's starting, and I'm not going anywhere. So that is why it's has gotten so bad, or was so bad. Luckily, I got help and got treatment. But look, this is why it was so bad. And the benefit of all of this experience is that it's over. Like, the battle may not be over, but now I'm fighting it right. Now I realize it, and now I see it. And I'm no longer running away. Because this is my life. This is my family. This is my future wife, my future baby, and our future. We have a future together. This is not, I'm not jeopardizing this. I'm not running away. And it all comes together, and it feels awesome. When stuff that's been going on for your entire adult life makes sense, or maybe your entire life. I'm a 44-year-old man, and stuff has been making more and more sense. And this is the biggest one of them, I think. The biggest one. Anyways, that's it, folks. I am at 28 minutes. If you're interested in reading any of my articles, check out my Medium. I'll put a link to my most recent article in the notes. Also, check me out on Amazon. Google David Soto Jr. or look me up on Amazon. I got books for sale. I got a baby coming, son. I'm trying to sell some books. I got to buy diapers and shit soon. So anyways, I appreciate you tuning in. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Ciao.